curious because you don't want to know just what is going on. You want to know why is it going on. What are the forces that are driving the issues that we are facing, the strategic issues that we are facing in our organizations every day? And even more importantly, so what? Right? What are you going to do about those issues? So curiosity can be a great thing. I think curiosity is the #1 required attribute for anybody in the data and analytics space and AI space. Right? You have to be curious. You have to be passionate. You have to be curious. And I know curiosity can be dangerous. As somebody who went online to discover the date of the Cuban Missile Crisis, and 2 hours later was in Wikipedia discovering the difference between punctuated and dynamic equilibrium, I completely understand the dangers of satiating just idle curiosity. So let me reassure you that the purpose of today's presentation is not to sit and admire the problems and not to just talk about the trends and how wonderful they are or dangerous they are in at least one case. We are here to get you off the tracks, to make sure that you are making the decisions, taking the actions, making the investments that you need to make to be successful and to make your organization successful. Because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter if you choose option A, better and faster, option B, better and cheaper, or option C, cheaper and faster, because we don't always need the best solution. Sometimes we just need something that's going to work right now. As long as we don't choose option D, none of the above. We did a survey of executive decision makers. 89% of them agreed with the statement that any decision is better than no decision. So let me reassure you, any decision you make will be better than no decision. Because your organization is not expecting you to do it all. They're not expecting you to do it perfectly, but they are expecting you to do something. And hopefully, as you've attended all of the sessions throughout this conference and those still to come, you will have found those action items, those things that you can be doing to add value in your organization, to drive the right outcomes for your business, institution, or other organization. This session is designed to help you map through all of those different options, because you've got a lot of things that you could be doing right now. And what I want to share with you are the trends and the implications of those trends so you can identify what your top priorities should be. What is your investment strategy going to look like? What is your data and analytics strategy look like? So what are some of the problems that you're facing? As you're talking to your colleagues, as you're talking to your peers here at the conference, I'm sure you recognize some of these issues. You're facing strategic issues in your organization. You're facing financial pressures. How do we justify the investments that have been made in data and analytics across our organizations? How do we make sure we're getting the maximum leverage, the maximum impact out of those investments? We're facing technological challenge. We're facing organizational challenges. We're facing issues with our people, with making sure we have enough of the right skills, enough of the motivation, enough of the engagement, and that we can continue to grow our teams and expand our footprint in the organization. We are facing all of these challenges. Now, you're going to see this slide repeated a few times through the presentation, because for each of the trends I'll talk about, I want to show you which of these issues are particularly acute because of that trend. Which of these problems that are facing your organization are being driven by that trend, because that will then identify for you which of these trends is the most significant right now for you to respond to. And as we go through the presentation, I'll be highlighting 11 different things that you can be doing to respond to these trends. So there's at least 11 potential outcomes, 11 potential actions that you should be taking. And this slide related to each of the trends will help you identify which of those 11 things are the things you should be doing for your organization. So let's dive in. What are the 4 top trends in data and analytics for 2024? What are the things we consistently see driving organizational thinking, requiring an organizational response, requiring a response from every single person in this room? Well, the first one is great news, hopefully for us, that data and analytics is moving from being kind of a must-have, but one that was good enough, right? Do we have enough of the systems that we need? Do we have the data? Do we have the reporting systems? better build a center of excellence. You know, we need to have data and analytics. For the last several decades, we've been saying, okay, you have to have data and analytics, and that message is absolutely percolating through into our organizations as we talk about becoming data-driven, as we make investments in our data and analytics strategy. But the change that we're seeing now is this is becoming a bet the business issue. Data and analytics no longer needs to be good enough. It has to be something that will drive the success of our organization. It's not just something that will be nice to have, it's something we have to have. And we are at the heart of that transition. Because we can go back in history and we can look at companies like Kodak or Blockbuster or Nokia, organizations, big, successful, poster child organizations of their industries at their time, who failed to adjust to seismic changes in the market, to fundamental changes in the market. And we are at the beginning of that new chapter right here, right now with AI. AI is transforming everything that we do and how we do it in our organization, in our own personal lives, and in our industry, and in our society. It is becoming a bet the business issue for our organizations, and we need to be the people who own that in our business. Second trend that we see, we're moving from, I'm going to say, a chaotic environment. One of my favorite movies is Jurassic Park. And I love Jurassic Park because they thought they had it all figured out. Right? They thought it was a very well-oiled machine. And in reality, they were living in the middle of a chaotic environment. They just didn't realize it. They were blind to the chaos that was around them. And I think for many of our organizations, unfortunately, we're in a similar position. We look at our data pipelines and our data and our metadata and our data stewards and our data analysts and our data scientists, and we think, wow, we've got it, right? We have everybody who we need, and they're doing the things they have to do, and everything is connected, and everything is interconnected, and yeah, we can smooth things off a little bit, but we are in the middle of a well-oiled machine. Problem is, we're not really in the middle of a well-oiled machine because we create problems for ourselves. We create our own chaos everywhere we go. We don't just inflict chaos on everybody else with transformational technologies like AI. We also do, well, what about hybrid cloud and multi-cloud? How are we balancing all of that kind of work? Were we building a data lake or a data lake house? Did we change our data lake into a data lake house? Or was that two different things? You said a fabric, but now you're talking about a mesh. There's a lot of chaos and confusion in our organizations, and unfortunately, we create some of it. So I feel like often what we have are like sedimentary layers of technology systems, of data and analytics systems, which have piled on top of each other as we tried to solve old problems with new technologies, and it didn't quite work, didn't quite solve all those problems, so then we had to build something else on top of that as well. So we have these sedimentary layers of data and technology systems which are introducing fragility into our organization. So we are one solar flare, one oil tanker stuck in a canal, one wannabe dictator away from chaos in our society and in our organizations. So where are we going with this? What's the transition that we see organizations making? It's towards one of managed complexity, of saying, yes, I know it's a chaotic environment, and it will always be a high level of complexity, of chaos in our world, but we can respond to it. We can begin to understand it. We can't control it necessarily. Maybe we can try and manage it, but we can certainly try to understand it. And that's the investments that we see organizations making in data and analytics now. It's to understand the chaos in which we are operating and put mechanisms in place to control and manage that complexity. The third trend is one that we certainly wouldn't wish. Right? This is not what we wish for. This is not a trend that we are trying to create. This is a trend that we have to accept, acknowledge, and move on with. And I'm saying from a single source of truth, and I want to be clear about that. I'm not saying a single source of truth is something we shouldn't aspire to. I'm not saying it's not a good idea. I'm not saying it's something that we shouldn't want. I was talking to one organization, and they said, yeah, we love that idea of a single source of truth. So we built 3 of them just to make sure we had that really good single source of truth. So I'm not saying we shouldn't aspire to the single source of truth. I'm saying that the days where people would accept that we had the single source of truth, that we are the single source of truth, are long gone. Right? We are living in a society, we are living in organizations facing a deluge of distrust. People don't trust institutions the way they used to. People don't trust data the way they used to. And when you look at the malinformation and the deep fakes and all of those types of things out there, can you really blame them? Right? This isn't just a well-intentioned misunderstanding of the data. This is people actively trying to sabotage our trust in data. sabotage their trust that we have in the language within which we operate, right? Data and information. So we need to address this issue, even if it's not one that we are trying to create. The final trend is one that resonates particularly with the people in our teams and the rest of our organization, and this is from being overloaded. Right? We have just gone through a horrible societal transition and transformation as a result of the pandemic, and the echoes of that are still being felt in our lives and in our careers and in the behaviors of people in our organization. What we see organizations doing is moving towards trying to empower their people, trying to level them up to a higher level of capability, a higher level of satisfaction, higher level of performance to drive those outcomes that we need. So we'll talk a little bit about this idea of being from overloaded, how do you deal with the overload in your organization, towards moving to a more empowered future for everybody in your business. So we're going to talk about each of these 4 trends. I'm going to provide you supporting kind of data, a couple of data points just to indicate where we came from. This data is the result of a lot of research we did on internal trends, external trends, societal trends, all sorts of different types of analysis. And I'll show you, again, what the impact of these trends are. So you can begin to identify for yourselves which one of these trends, or which 2 or 3 of these trends are the ones that you most need to respond to. I think you need to respond to all of them to a certain extent, but some of them are going to be more acute for you in your organizations today. So let's talk about this movement from good enough to bet the business. This is some surveys we did of senior executives in organizations, and we asked them about all sorts of technologies and how impactful they would be. And this was the #1 finding. Gen AI, 74% said this will be high impact in our industry in less than 3 years. Think about that. A technology that 3/4 of senior executives are saying will be high impact, and almost all the rest said moderate impact for their entire industry. This isn't transforming a function or a particular organization. This is transforming their industry in less than 3 years. This is why bet the business, or data and analytics and AI have become a bet the business function. This will determine the success of your organization. If you don't want to be the case study that sits alongside Kodak and Blockbuster and Nokia in years to come, the decisions that your organization makes within 3 years will determine the success of your future and your organization for decades to come. What are some of the symptoms of this? What are some of the things to watch out for in your organization? If you're feeling these pain points, it's probably because you're not proving your value in this bet the business context. Because the interesting nuance to this issue of bet the business isn't just that you need to be doing the things that will ensure your organization's success. It's that you need to be putting yourself in the position to be the one to make those decisions. You have to own this. You have to drive this. You have to be the person that the organization comes to with these bet the business decisions and says, what do we do? How do we do it? What are we going to do about this? And the way you prove yourself ready for that responsibility is by addressing these issues, by proving the value of what you do today. Right? It's not necessarily even a matter of proving the value you're going to deliver in AI. It's proving that you are capable stewards and capable managers of the work that your organization does today. So if you're feeling these pain points, it's because you're not necessarily communicating that value as much as you need to the rest of the business. So what are the 3 actions I would suggest if you're getting ready to step up or step aside, right? The organization, your organization is betting the business on decisions that are in your domain, so you either need to step up to be ready to take those decisions or step aside so somebody else can. What are the 3 things to do? First of this, you have to prove your value to the organization. You have to prove the connection between the capabilities you're establishing and the outcomes that they are enabling within your organization. Now, we have a variety of tools within Gartner that can help you do this. We have the enterprise value equation, we have use case prisms, we have the value pyramid. All of these things will help you to achieve this. But the question I want you to think about right now, before you dive into the details of any of those tools and techniques or whatever mechanism you have to prioritize your investments, is what does my organization value? What are the things that my organization considers to be their #1 priority, their #2 priority? Right? Is it just purely profit? Even for most commercial organizations, I don't think the answer would be, well, it's just purely profit. And certainly you can nuance that and say, well, is it revenue growth? Is it cost optimization? What do we do there? But for you, those of you in the nonprofit sector, in the governmental sector, in the educational institutions, what do you value? Because that will help you clarify this question of what is the value we need to demonstrate to our organization. Second thing to think about, have to be investing in FinOps. We are facing a cost explosion in almost everything we do. Does anybody want to suggest that they saved money by moving to the cloud? Didn't think so. Anybody think AI is going to be cheaper than any other way of doing analysis in the future? Definitely not. Okay. We are going to face a cost avalanche heading our way. We have to invest in FinOps techniques in order to manage that cost. What we are needing to prove is that we are responsible stewards with our organization's resources. It's not about reducing our cost. It's not about eliminating cost. There's a lot of opportunities for us to spend money very intelligently, to use OpEx-driven operating models as a way of driving competitive advantage. So there are opportunities here as well as just costs, but you need to prove that you are responsible stewards with your organization's resources, and FinOps is the way to do that. The third thing you'd want to make sure you have in order to prove your value, in order to prove that you are the person the organization can come to when they are betting the business on decisions, is that you have influence, that you can drive alignment, and that you can exercise discipline. All three of those can be achieved with this idea of a data and analytic franchise. And obviously, all of the things I'm talking about here, you've seen hopefully some of these things in sessions. All of these elements are available to you for replay in the Conference Explorer app. So you can listen more about these and you can find out more about all of these things in more detail from the rest of the sessions in the conference. This is to help you prioritize, okay, what do I need to be thinking about? FinOps and franchises, FinOps or franchises. The thing I want you to think about specifically here is what are your red lines, right? As you establish these analytic franchises, what are the red lines that you don't want anybody else in your organization to cross? Like, I don't care what you do with the data storage approach, cloud, hybrid cloud, multi-cloud, I don't care, as long as you don't do this. I don't mind what analytic tool you use, as long as you don't analyze this data in this way. Right? What are your red lines? You need to be very clear about what your red lines are as you establish these data and analytic franchises. Second trend we talked about is this movement from chaotic to complex. Right? Data and analytics, we're supposed to make sense of this chaotic world. 71% of executive decision makers say all the decisions that they are making over the next few years are going to be more complex. And I don't think there's ever going to be an end to this complexity. The world will never become a simpler place than it is right now. From now on till the end of time, the world is going to become more complex, and we need to be able to respond and to manage that. Here are some of the issues that suggest that you're going to struggle to manage that complexity, to break out of the chaos within which your organization is operating today. And I want to call your particular attention to the one right in the middle, multiple points of failure. Data and analytics is the heart of our organizations. It is the glue that binds our organizations together. It takes every part of our organization and it links it together. We are at the heart of our business, which means that we are the single point of failure for almost everything else in our business. If our systems go down, the entire organization goes down. If we don't link the data together, the data doesn't get linked together. If those processes fail because we didn't get them the data or the insight they needed, then those processes fail and the entire organization is in jeopardy. So complexity is a huge issue for us to address to make sure we are delivering the robust solutions that our organizations need to be successful. And to do that, we are not just managing complexity. I would argue we need to embrace complexity. We need to make complexity our friend, our ally, because it takes us away from chaos and it gives us a new way of looking at the world. Now, there is a human tendency whenever we are presented with a challenge to try and solve that challenge by adding complexity. It takes a lot of discipline, it takes a huge amount of creativity to reduce complexity, to introduce simplicity into things. But that's the challenge I would pose to you, is to how to balance the complexity within your organization. You can't just keep making everything more complex, everything more sophisticated. At a certain point, you have to put an equal amount of effort into making it simpler. I love these little kids' bikes. Right? It goes back to the very first bike that was ever invented. Didn't have any pedals. It was a simpler way of solving the problem, and it was actually a better way of solving the problem than adding stabilizers and all the things we've done ever since then. Humans tend to add complexity. It takes discipline to make it shorter. There's any Mark Twain fans in the room? Quick show of hands, Mark Twain fans? Okay, not enough. Key action add-on, takeaway. Mark Twain, I'm sorry this letter was so long, I didn't have time to make it shorter. Balance your complexity. How do you make life easier for yourself by reducing and eliminating complexity in some areas, but also embracing and driving complexity in others? Second thing to invest in, understanding your ecosystem. We need to have an ecosystem way of thinking. A way of thinking that understands that everything is connected to everything else. And if we drive things here, they have an impact over there. And this is often different to what I see as described as an economic mindset. An economic mindset says that bigger is always better. More is always good. An ecological mindset says, yes, sometimes more is also good, but more almost always causes implications elsewhere. It unbalances our ecosystem. And I'm not just talking about the environment, I'm talking about our organizational ecosystem. I'm talking about the processes, the size of teams, the location of teams, all of the things that we do, the different missions and objectives that different teams across the organizations all have. What are we trying to achieve? What are we trying to do? And then also extending those feelers out into the rest of our environment, our competitive market, our suppliers, our customers, our partners. Right? We need to understand our ecosystem, so organizations are investing in things like digital twins, things like process mining, things like simulation engines, in order to understand this ecosystem. It's a critical part for us to understand the complexity within which we are operating and be able to manage and embrace that complexity. Third recommendation in terms of this idea of embracing complexity is obviously augment with AI-enabled systems, right? We can't have a conference without talking about this. The point I want you to take away from this, apart from all of these action items, the things you should do in response to this, is to recognize that we are not aiming for automation. I'll repeat that. We are not aiming for automation. We are not trying to replace people with machines, with systems, with AIs. We are augmenting it so that people become better with the AI, and the AI becomes smarter and maybe more human with the person. In use case after use case after use case, we consistently see that human plus AI outperforms obviously human, but also just the AI. Human plus AI beats just AI. So we are talking about augmenting systems. Third trend, the one we don't want, the one we don't like, right? The one we don't want, the deluge of distrust, right? What are we doing to deal with this issue? Now, I could put a lot of survey data up here that shows how people have lost trust in institutions, how people have lost trust in the media, how people have lost trust in certainly politicians, how people have lost trust in businesses and organizations. But that's a lot of societal background to the issue that we also are losing trust in ourselves. This was the survey that we did to, again, senior executive decision makers about their view of AI and what their concerns were. And one thing that's not on that list, they're not concerned it won't deliver value. Right? There's no question it will deliver value. There's no question it's going to be transformational. The concerns they have are all related to trust. Do we trust ourselves to use this data appropriately? Do we trust this data to manage our relationships with our employees, with our team members appropriately? Do we trust ourselves to have this information and make sure it is kept private and secure? Right? These are issues of trust in ourselves and trust in our data. And if you're not managing that trust appropriately, then you're going to face these problems. These are the issues that will stalk your organization if you don't address some of these issues around trust and establishing trust. So what we're really doing is we're building trust. Right? That's our job, is to build trust in data. And I'm going to argue data quality is one way to build trust, but we don't want data quality. What we want is trust in data. Right? Now, obviously, we want that trust to be well placed. Right? We don't want to just have people trust bad data. We want people to trust good data, but you're there to build the trust because right now what we have is good data but no trust. And what we need to build is that trust in the good data. So what do we do to do that? Well, we ensure explainability and accountability, or auditability, right? We need people to understand what is being done with the data, who's doing what with the data, why are they doing it, what are the outcomes, how is it being used? We need to understand this and build this audit trail into all of our systems to ensure good governance. But nobody cares about governance, but everybody cares about explainability. Everybody cares about auditability, right? So let's use some of those words maybe to drive engagement in some of the fundamental governance processes that we need to have in our organization. Second thing we can do is ensure your data is AI ready. Now, in a focus group we ran literally here at Symposium 4 months ago. We asked IT leaders, CIOs predominantly, and senior executives in the technology space about whether or not their data was AI ready. 4% of them said that their data was AI ready. And I'm going to argue 3% of that 4%, or 75% of that 4%, were told that by somebody who was very optimistic in their organization when they called them out. Gartner's talking about AI-ready data. Is our data AI-ready? Yes, boss. Yeah, it is. Most of us do not have AI-ready data because most of us don't even know what AI-ready data looks like right now. Because the use cases for AI are continually changing, are continually expanding, and therefore the definition of, well, what is ready is also continually changing, right? There is no such thing as AI-ready data because AI will mean 100 different things to your organization. It'll mean 1,000 different things to your organization in 5 years' time. So whether or not it's AI-ready is going to be 1,000 different answers in 5 years' time. This is why communication is so valuable. This is why talking to your business leaders about what does AI-ready data mean to them, what is their definition of AI-ready data, what level of trust do they need to have in this data is so critical. Because we can't answer the question today, but we can have the conversation today about what the expectations are and what the needs are from our business to make our data AI-ready. That leads us to our fourth trend, getting our people to be less overloaded, less stressed, less feeling that everything is coming at them, and more able to take advantage of opportunities, more able to deliver value confidently within the organization. Now, the interesting thing, particularly interesting survey data that I found, is this piece on the right, which showed us that over 50% of people surveyed, when we said, what word do you associate with AI? More than 50% of them said, well, it's complex. But they've always said that. I mean, they've always said complex is number one thing. It used to be about 25 to 50% of people said it was complex. Now more than 50% of people are saying AI is complex. It's so much for Gen AI making things simpler. AI is complex, said almost everybody. Second issue, second thing, more than 50% of people said it's threatening. They said AI is threatening. The second most common thing used to be impressive. A few years ago, AI is complex, but it's impressive. And a few years before that, AI was complex, but also fascinating. AI has gone from being fascinating to being threatening in just a few short years as we've started doing more and more of it. I don't think that's a coincidence. So what does this mean for our organizations? Well, it means you're probably facing some of these problems, and you notice a lot of these problems are obviously to do with our people, right? Because it's an opportunity for us to engage with our stakeholders, to engage with our teams, our partners, our colleagues across our organization, to transform and make them more valuable. Possibly the single most valuable thing any one of us can do is to make the rest of our team more powerful and more productive. Because as a team, our group productivity, our group performance way outweighs anything we as an individual can do. So if you want to have an impact in your organization, change the people around you, and that's what some of these opportunities will do. First thing you can do, ensure your people are AI ready. Right? AI is going to be deployed in all sorts of different ways. And that means that although we have this promise that, well, isn't the whole point of AI is that the machine, we're training the machine instead of the machine training us, right? That's the promise of AI. We don't have to learn the system learns us. In reality, it's not less training, it's different training. So we still need to invest in AI literacy, in building out an AI-ready team, and recognize in particular that the skill sets required for your expert users dealing with AI are going to be very different than the skill sets required for your typical users as they address AI. So you're going to have multiple different strategies for developing literacy within your organization. Second thing, we need to govern for end-user empowerment. Change your governance processes to empower people, to enable people to do the things they need to do, to understand how to work with the business, to work with technology. This is all about change management. If you're not comfortable doing that, go work with your HR department around change management exercises, change management training in your organization. Get some for yourself, get some for your team, so you can work with the rest of your organization to drive this empowerment across the business. And then finally, make sure you build out this personal productivity time, right? Some personal innovation time for yourself and for everybody in your team. There's a great heuristic I love which says that everybody should meditate for 10 minutes a day. And if you don't have 10 minutes a day, then spend 20 minutes. That's what we need to do. We need to have this personal innovation time. And if you don't think you've got time to be innovative, then you have a way bigger problem than anything else that's on your plate right now. So I've shared these 11 ideas with you, or these 11 action items to address these 4 top trends in data and analytics. Let me wrap this up in just a few simple ways. What are the immediate actions that you can take? Well, you can do these 2 things. You can change your thinking, change your attitudes, change your beliefs. Not easy, but it's something you can start doing right now so you can begin to think about balancing complexity. When do I introduce more complexity? When do I introduce simplicity into my organization? And you can protect that precious innovation time. I want you to think like a CFO for a moment. I want you to be a responsible steward of your organization's assets and be able to draw the connection between the capabilities you're establishing and the business outcomes. Not because you need to do that to do AI, you will, but that's not the issue today. Today, the issue is proving that you are responsible and credible as the solution to your organization's bet the business issues. Third thing to think about, let it go. And I'm not going to sing, but let it go. Right? You need to decentralize this. You cannot do this just as your own data and analytics team. It's all about the relationships, the connections you build with the rest of your organization. So you need to start letting some of this stuff go and working with the business to empower others. But you also need to get a grip. Right? You need to understand what's going on in your organization, with your people, with your data. You need to be the master of your domain. You have to understand all of these issues in order to be successful and effective. So 4 different categories of things across 11 different actions to address 4 top trends in data and analytics. Thank you all very, very much for your kind attention. Thank you. Thank you.